Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, I am so excited to have you on today. I am fascinated by your story. I think it's interesting. I think it's inspiring, and just excited to be able to dig into it a little more today.
Oh, happy to be here.
Yeah.
And dig into it.
Yeah. So you're from the Chicago area. So am I. I am born and raised in the northern suburbs. I went to college in Hyde Park, spent some time living in the city after college. So
What
it's very
suburb?
Near and dear to my heart, northern suburbs. I grew up in Winnetka. Yeah, and it's so always have a soft spot in my heart for Chicago and the Chicago area. I'm curious, when you are back in the district and you get a little bit of time to kind of unwind and enjoy yourself, like what is your ideal Chicago day?
Well, I'll tell you the ideal Chicago location.
Yeah.
I guess there's two, depending on who you ask. My husband would say to you, he hopes it's our backyard because he's been working on that backyard since we got together to make it our backyard oasis in the middle of the city. I got to tell you, I grew up in Humboldt Park. I actually have lived my entire life within a 3-mile radius in Chicago. But there's just something about the park itself that grounds me and brings serenity. It's this park that is like prairie-like in the middle of the city, right? It's about 3 miles from downtown Chicago. But when you're there in this man-made lake, at the field house, at the boathouse, I swear it feels like you're, 3 hours from the city, except for when you hear the beautiful music, Bad Bunny playing in the background and others, but which is great. But it reminds you you're not really far away, somewhere really far away. But I love Humboldt Park. I love walking in Humboldt Park, sitting and watching all the ducks, hearing families just do picnics. That park is so special.
They got engaged. Picnic table setups as well.
I did engagement pictures twice there, 2 different marriages, got engaged there twice, got married once there as well, not 2 times, but once there. I mean, I just joke with people, I'm like, anything really important in my life has happened at Humboldt Park.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I have benches there, but it's just, it's that kind of park. Have you ever been to it?
I don't think so.
You have to. There's like this rose garden where people, all the cotillions, the weddings, people go take pictures. They just park on the side. They drive up into the sidewalk to go take pictures. It's just a really different kind of park right in the middle of the city. And it feels grounding. It's also where we have the Puerto Rican Festival every year and the parade.
Yeah.
So for many of us, like being from Humboldt Park, going to the park itself just like grounds you and reminds you, this is very Chicago, but also very diverse.
Yeah, I think something I love about Chicagoans, like they are going to make the most of a nice day too. They love their green spaces.
Listen, you get 50 degrees and sunny, we're all at the park.
I love it. It's always so fun. Those like first nice days in the spring too, where you know it's just going to be, it's jam-packed and you're shoulder to shoulder, almost shoulder to shoulder, but like you're just appreciative that you're outside and everybody else is enjoying it, which kind of makes you enjoy it a little bit more. So
people are walking. The parents are taking their kids to learn how to ride the bike. To the southern part of the park, you have people, older Puerto Ricans playing dominoes. It's just like, it's the summary of what community in Chicago should be like. And I think for a lot of people, it's like what people remember New York's, Bronx and different neighborhoods in the 90s when they'd watch those movies. We still in many ways have that in Humboldt Park.
I love that. So that's kind of your ideal Chicago day. I know in DC your schedule's probably insane. You probably don't get a ton of time to in a given day to do much on your own, but when you do get a little bit of time to yourself and a few minutes to kind of disconnect, what are you reading, what are you watching, or what are you listening to right now?
I'd say to you, I want to do more of that. I want to find my version of my mini Humboldt Park in DC. And I have to spend a couple of weekends here. I haven't done that just yet. I try to get to Chicago as quickly as I can right after votes if possible.
It's a quick enough flight.
Right? It is the hour and a half as long as there's no delays. But I would say to you, there's a little park right by the house that I try to go for a walk and listen to a little bit of music. And that, to me, that's my way of unwinding and then heading right back home. And then I'll tell you, I'm lucky enough that I came with a class 2 years ago of people that I really like. There's a couple of folks those are the folks that we find a way every single week to go have dinner, have a glass of wine, come over to our little old row house, bring some wine. You have a nut allergy, you make sure you bring the snacks. So it's really nice. I was
going to save that for later. I'd actually love to jump into it because of course I'm learning as much about you as I can going into this, and I'd seen that Congressman Robert Garcia had been complimentary about the fact that you're like a very engaging person with your colleagues, and you try to get in contact with them and see them and kind of create that sense of camaraderie. So I'm curious, I know in your first term you lived with Congresswoman Summer Lee.
Still do.
You still do? Okay.
That's right.
So what?
We're in year 3.
Okay, so how did you, I mean, I know you probably met, you were in the same, freshman class, but curious kind of what drew you to her where you were like, okay, this is my roommate from now on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big commitment.
Yeah.
Like you're working with them and you're going to see them, on those really long days when you don't want to see anyone, on those really hard days when things are not going our way, when you're trying to figure out how do you do call time, how do you do the events, how do you do a circuit, how do you push back in committee and show up and then come home to someone. Look, it was pretty simple. We kind of knew of each other, but we didn't really know each other. We're at orientation. I have a spreadsheet of places I have to go look at. I haven't looked at. And I turn around to her and I ask her, like, so did you find an apartment? Because everyone apparently found something 3 months ago. She's like, no, I haven't found anything. I'm like, no? Like, so are you like open to living with someone? And she's like, yeah. I was like, I wasn't until I saw the DC rent prices, but do you want to be a roommate? Do you want to try? And it was one of those, it came together. And Greg Kassar, Congressman Kassar, who is our other buddy, BFF, said to me, there's this row house I'm looking at. We may not take it because I'm looking for other amenities. If you're interested, I'll tell the landlord. Summer and I walked in and we said, we found our unit. Greg, you better not be interested in it. Go look for your amenities. We're taking the house.
I'm sure a landlord too is like, 2 members of Congress, I'm game. This is an easy decision.
You know what's funny enough? It's a former member of Congress's house.
Okay.
Progressive before progressive was real progressive, popular, I guess. A member from Texas who rents us his house. So it was really cool. Greg said to me, well, he likes to rent to progressive. So I think you fit that category. And then, we made the argument. But no, it's been great. We've lived, we've rented this little row house in Capitol Hill for 3 years now, and we've said if we're gonna move, there was a whole thing about fearful of rodents in the area, and she said to me, if you end up wanting to move, you're taking me with you. So anyway, it's been great because I think at the end of the day, oftentimes people forget that members of Congress and elected officials are also human. And we need interaction, we need relationships. And it's hard in this space to build authentic relationships. So if we're being completely honest, right? So to have friends like Summer, like Maxwell, like Robert, like Greg, like Morgan McGarvey.
Well, and people you like actively want to hang out with in your free time, which I don't think.
Work. It doesn't feel like work.
Do you, when you're in those interactions, is there like a rule of like we're going to try to take politics out of this for a certain period of time, or is it like everything's kind of fair game when you're all together?
Everything's fair game.
Okay.
And then once in a while, one of us will say, okay. So
no
how's
work.
So like, what did you do this weekend? Or like, let's talk about love life. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. But it's one of those like, we'll be 3-4 hours together and we will cover every subject one can imagine.
Yeah.
Over bourbon or, vodka, soda, water, and lime, and all the drinks that we all know we've memorized of each other.
I love it. Well, I'm glad that you're building that camaraderie. I know we don't hear a ton about it right now, so it's good that someone is out there trying to, like you said, kind of build the social and the friendship part of it, because sometimes it's just as important when you need to like consult people on big decisions and you need to do things other than just listen in your own head. It's good to have people you get to turn to.
And to be able to process it. And look, yes, we're all progressive. We come from different places. Morgan comes from Louisville, Kentucky, right? It's a little different from Chicago, Illinois, although it's still a city and, there's some similarities there, but Orlando and Pittsburgh are not the same. Pittsburgh and Austin is not the same. And certainly when you think about Kentucky, Texas, Illinois, Pennsylvania, California, there's similarities and we're also very different people.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes people assume like, oh, you're all friends because you all vote exactly the same. Your perspectives are exactly the same. Your relationships are exactly the same. They're not. But we share values and we certainly share the value of our own relationship that we can also wrestle with each other. Well, why did you vote this way? Or like, where are you on this thing? Or who are you going to support for this particular leadership position, right? Because we're not always in the same place, but it's also an opportunity for us to actually agitate each other. Like, okay, so what are we trying to do here? And how do we make sure you don't get lost in this place that is dark and heavy and crazy and inauthentic? And to me, that's one of the biggest gifts in this place. Because I don't know what it would have been like had I not came in with them in the class that I came in.
I'm sure if you're in, especially right now, it's DC's crazy and it feels chaotic and it's a lot of, heated floor debates and shouting in committee hearings and all of that. And so I think if you were doing it solo and just kind of left your day and then didn't really have a place to decompress or people to decompress with, I could see where it would get isolating fast. So I'm very glad you have that.
And you don't want members of Congress crabby all the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question because you mentioned Greg Casar. I'm curious about this because I know you're designated as a member of the squad, and that has the people have some people are no longer in Congress. There are some new members. What is the enrollment like that? Is there like a formal offer that is extended of like, hey, do you want to be in this? And you're like, I guess so. Like, what is the, how does it happen?
Yeah, well, that's been one of the wildest question for me since I got to Congress. So did like AOC schedule a meeting, an official like swearing in? I'm like, no, there is no official like squad caucus. It's not a caucus. It's not like a formal group. It's not a PAC, a society as people think of it. There's a local reporter who said, aha, I knew you were in the squad. I just saw it on Wikipedia. I was like, okay. You want a hug? What do you?
So you feel like this is more of like a media designated thing?
I think media designates that. Look, are we in relationship? Do we share values? Are we in community with each other? We are. And yeah, I mean, I think there are chats that we're on that we call squad chats. But I don't think it's one of those things that like people assume it to be this formalized society that you're either in or you're not. I think that others will put you in those spaces more, and I probably will vote 99.9% of the time with them anyway. Yeah. But it's one of those things where people make it to be this like mystical, weird thing versus this natural. I happen to share what Summer and what Alex and what Ayana and what Rashida and Ilhan believe about most things. And we like each other. And sometimes we go out and hang out together and we care about each other.
Well, I'm glad we're able to demystify that a little bit today.
There was no official swearing in or any thing.
So I'd love to rewind a little bit. You were born and raised in Humboldt Park. You mentioned that your parents were immigrants from Guatemala. I know your mom, as you've talked about before, crossed the Rio Grande when she was pregnant with you. Tell me just a little bit about what your childhood was like growing up.
Yeah, I mean, look, I had a great childhood. I'm the oldest of 4. I grew up not speaking English until I was 7, right? Because no one in my family spoke English. And in our community, most of the people around me didn't speak English. And I went to a Spanish-speaking congregation. And so I remember starting kindergarten with 30 minutes of English and trying to learn. And then my 2nd grade, I remember I transferred schools and the principal said, well, technically, she's already had 3 years of bilingual, which I think was like 30 minutes a day of English classes. I think she's ready to go all English only. I remember how traumatizing that was for me. I remember 2nd grade, Miss Cohen. That was the name of my teacher, which I know I look young, but that was a couple years ago. Yeah. And she asked me to go to the board and write, use the word close in a sentence. CLOSE. No, close it. Close the door, right? Okay. And I thought closet, close it, and I think there was an enclose. Yeah. All as the same word because in my mind it sounded the same. And I go and write the word and I misuse it in a sentence. And all these kids, some of them also Latino, who spoke perfect English, started making fun of me. And I'll tell you that was such a defining moment for me because so many kids, immigrant kids or kids who are English is their second language from all over the world, when they're exposed to a shift in culture and language, there's this assumption because you speak another language that you're not as smart, or they have to talk to you louder, or, oh, she's a Spanish kid. I remember the word Spanish kid. And I was like, I don't want to be a Spanish kid. I want to just be a kid. I want to be a cool kid. Mm-hmm. I remember the laughing at me and how much that fundamentally changed the way that I saw the world in terms of I want to prove that I can speak English. I want to prove that I can adapt, that I can be both Chapina, Guatemalan, and American. And I want to learn how to pronounce all these words. And I'll never forget the words close, close it, and close, right? Yeah. So I'm now 42, right?
But those things give you, they're right? so memorable, and they give you this like fire that you
and this,
carry
this
with you through life.
Need to like fit in. And like, I'm going to learn these words, master these words, and win the spelling bee in the 5th grade, which that was so important for me to do. But then I'd go home and try to explain this to my mom. She's like, why does that matter to you? What's your grade in the class? I'm like, well, I'm doing good. That's all that matters. Right? My mom would always come back to, why does that matter to you? That doesn't matter. Do well in school. You'll teach them.
That's the type of like clarity adults have that like
that
when you're a kid,
what do you mean, Mom?
it's a lot harder to realize that until you're a fully formed adult that like none of that matters eventually, but when you're a kid, it
Which is why I was
you.
like, but it's your fault. It's you and Papi because you make me speak Spanish at home. My mom would say to my brother and I, in this house, you only speak Spanish. When you go out there to school and your friends, you can speak English. Here, Spanish only. And I would get so mad at her. I'm like, Mom, I'm never going to be able to learn. Of course, thankfully, I had Sesame Street. I had Barney and other supports at home to help me. But I think about that now, fast forward.
Yeah.
Thank God that she didn't let me. I am fully bilingual, mostly, right? There are some words I don't know in Spanish because they're legal terms, but had she not, and she tells me now, I told you so. But it's like the mantra of the mom, right? I told you so. Aren't you glad I didn't let you speak English at home?
I'm sure for her too, it was this like for you, it's like a maintenance of identity thing, or for her too. So now you feel like you're very rooted too in her identity as well. And that's
right. And the duality of culture, right?
Yeah.
That I could be both. And you don't have to choose.
Yeah.
I am American and I am Guatemalan. I am Latina, right? And I am from Chicago. I can speak Spanish and English and connect with people in that way. But you can't tell that to a 2nd grader to understand that.
So I know when your parents, they brought you to the U.S. and you're growing up and they're undocumented. And I'm curious for you, when you were growing up, was that something that you felt conscious of or that you were aware of growing up, or did it feel? And I'm trying to compare this, I guess, to today and this feeling and this kind of fear that we hear that people have. And I'm curious if back then it felt like that for you, or if it felt more like, in the past, even for people who were undocumented, that there was this kind of feeling of, well, they're here and they're working hard and they're paying taxes and they're contributing to the community. And so it was less of a present kind of fear and feeling.
I was always aware of my identity. I was always aware of my identity in the way that I knew I wasn't exactly the same as everyone else. And I'll tell you, now we'll break it down even deeper. I grew up in Humboldt Park, right? Was born in Beaumont-Cragen, around the corner, and then grew up in Humboldt Park. I grew up in a majority Puerto Rican Mexican community. I remember being in school and being asked all the time, are you Mexican or Puerto Rican? And I hated that question because I wasn't either. And so the follow-up question was, well, what are you? I was like, well, I'm Guatemalan. Oh, you're Mexican. No, it's another country. So like this whole thing. And I tell my mom, why am I not Puerto Rican? The cool kids are Puerto Rican and I'm Guatemalan. Like, why wasn't I born to Puerto Rican parents? And they said that if I was Puerto Rican, I'd be a citizen. And I was a citizen, right? But it was like these ideas of your identity, even within the Latino community. Because I think oftentimes you put people in buckets.
Yeah.
And you assume that all of the people that are associated with a particular race or identity all are the same. Chileans and Ecuadorians are not the same. In the same way Dominicans and Mexicans or Puerto Ricans and Guatemalans are not the same. So even those identities growing up, I always knew, and my father is dark-skinned, my mother's lighter, that I'd walk into a space that was mostly white, my father would get the looks. I felt it. And it's crazy, right? I didn't have to be in 8th grade, 7th grade. I remember it as early as 3rd grade as something does not feel right. I don't feel safe when we go to these particular suburbs or outside of these particular communities. And the silos that even in cities like Chicago, that there are, right?
Chicago is a notoriously siloed
The segregation
city.
Of like, you may be in a community where you are only with one particular community. It might be a Black neighborhood where people have not seen other cultures, or a Latino neighborhood or an Irish neighborhood. And that segregation has consequences. And that's why, to me, it's really important that we're able to be in different spaces. But I'll be honest, the thing that really made a difference for me, I grew up in a small United Methodist church where my family started going to at a very young age for me. I had an opportunity to get involved with the church at more of the city and state and then national level. It was there where I got to meet young people from all over the world. Those experiences fundamentally changed me. It's how I got to really understand the conflict in Israel and Palestine. It's fundamentally how I understood a little bit more about the Soviet experience in Russia. I was in Russia. I was in Israel. I was in Gaza, right? And for me, going to Peru and Bolivia and Mexico and Grenada, all within 16 to 35, really gave me a global perspective of the world and how I engage into it. That wouldn't have happened had I not been part of this global church. And my parents would have had the courage to send me off. At 15, I went to Honduras to help build homes after Hurricane Mitch. It was a country right next to Guatemala, but I spent 2 months there.
Wow.
My mom came back and said, "You're still Guatemalan, you're not Honduran," right? Because our identities of culture.
I love it. She's going to safeguard that Guatemalan identity at the end of the day.
Because I went back the following year. There was another summer trip for young people, and I went. And my mom that time, she came with my dad and picked me up and said, "Now we're going to Guatemala to visit your grandparents because you're Guatemalan. Remember, you're not Honduran." Yeah. but I got to tell you, though, there's just something about those opportunities to be able to be with others that truly transform the way you see others. Yeah. And I think that's what's wrong with this country today. We don't do enough of that. Teach me about your culture. Teach me about your experience. I want to eat your food. I want to hear your music. Because the more I did that, the more I realized just how alike. I was asked what I was doing with the Amerikanskis in Russia. And I asked the interpreter, what did he ask me? Oh, he thinks you're Russian and he's wanting to know what these Americans are. I have never in my life in Chicago been confused to be a Russian, right? So I say that to you to say, to me, it wasn't easy being the daughter of immigrants. It wasn't easy to be the one to translate for my parents. Yeah. Because as the oldest, I was also my mom's friend, right? And confidant when there was fights between mom and dad. And I was the one in the middle when mom and dad would fight, and I would go mediate among them. Not real fights, but Dad, my mom didn't really mean that. Mom, so much of that we still do today. Yes. I think in other ways. And I also struggled with identity. I also struggled with not feeling like I was enough. Yeah. I also struggled in high school with wanting to network more than do the schoolwork, right? Because this idea and this desire of wanting to fit in. And that's real. And I think 100%. Most people don't talk about that, right? You and I probably had that same struggle, I would say. So I totally get it. What can I be? I grew up in a church, and there are certain parts of the church that I reject, right? And how do I reject it and still feel worthy? And so to me, all those experiences fundamentally helped me reach a place where I understood one thing. There is something wrong in this world. And wherever I see injustice, even when I feel scared, I have to figure out how to speak up.
Yeah. Well, I guess continuing on from that too, you mentioned, building housing in foreign countries when you were involved with your church. Obviously, that led to kind of this professional path you ended up on. You were in leadership roles at several different organizations that were shaping housing policy in Illinois and battling homelessness. I'm curious for you, was there a period of time in that part of your career where you kind of realized this is vital and really important for the community, but I think I have a role in trying to push some more systemic change as opposed to kind of what I'm doing here day to day?
First, let me say to you that I told you that I really struggled with depression quietly, identity, who am I? What do I like? Where do I want to be? Am I enough? Do I fit in? So, you fake it till you make it. Try to get people to like you so that you can like yourself. I struggled with a lot of that. But even in the midst of that, people always saw in me leadership, courage that I wouldn't see in myself. As a young person at 14, 15, I'm struggling in high school, but friends saw me as a leader. Well, Delia will help you figure out that problem. At church, I was the president of the youth group. I was struggling myself, but somehow I was helping steer 12 other young people, to ask questions about life, about sexuality, about community, about service, right? What I have always found is that people have seen in me leadership that perhaps I had not seen in myself. That was a pattern that I think has followed me my whole life. And even when I ran for Congress, what do you mean I should run for Congress? Me? No, she should run for Congress, or she should run for Congress. And to get to that place, well, why not me? And you asked me, was there a point where I realized, there has to be a shift? I volunteered at this local shelter that my church started for many years. And then I became the mail lady at 17. At 21, I became the executive director of now this social service agency that became its own organization. I was there for 9 years. But I never stopped asking the question, why are people experiencing homelessness to begin with? Why are they hungry? It was actually those questions that led me to more leadership. There came a point where I had to step back and be honest that I felt that I was more a system worker than a system changer. That it is important for people and organizations to do the direct service, but we also have to be changing the system that makes it possible for people to be homeless, right? And so for me, there was a moment where I realized at the very old age of 30, after 13 years in my career of public service and social services, that I no longer wanted to do direct service. That I was so angry at the politicians, the system, and the government that had created the circumstances and the conditions in which it kept people poor. And I wanted to work on policy. I wanted to run coalitions. I wanted to organize. I wanted to send people to the state capitals, to city councils, to be able to start changing policy. But if you would have told me then that I'd run for office, like, no. I'm going to go do the coalition stuff because those sleazy, weird people that don't relate to us, I don't want to be around them like that. I don't want to be one of them. I want to be pushing them.
Well, it's cool you got,
And then I became that.
Yeah,
so never say never.
Yeah, you get the boots on the ground experience, which is good. I obviously too, it sounds like you were surrounded by people who really believed in your potential, and it sounds like your entire life, and that's important. Exactly. And I'm fortunate I benefit from people like that in my life as well. And it's amazing when you don't know you can do something and then someone goes, no, I think this is a good fit for you and this is something you should try. And so it sounds like maybe you were doing the boots on the ground work, but clearly people thought you were meant for something else as well. And so I know you're working at these nonprofits that you end up running for office and winning a seat in the Illinois State House. You had some pretty marquee legislative achievements there and were effective. And I know, one of them was the state of Illinois passed a law. It was the first state in the United States that was providing Medicaid benefits to undocumented seniors. I'm curious for you, for when you were able to kind of be a part of getting that accomplished, did it sort of change your realization or your idea of what was politically possible?
I got to the state house despite of big money in politics, despite of establishment, and despite of the fact that I wasn't related to another politician. I didn't come from a dynasty. For those that understand Chicago politics, you have to understand that that's not easy to do.
It is the Chicago political machine for a reason.
It's this whole question of who sent you, right? And if you can't answer that question, the follow-up is like, you're never going to get there. Yeah. So for me, it was very clear. I had spent 13 years in social services and about 5 years in policy work and coalition work. I went and did the coalition work. I was a deputy director of a faith-based coalition organization who was organizing in the state capitol. So we did all that. And for me, having 200 volunteers knock on doors, do local fundraisers. I think we did more than 30 fundraisers in that period of time that I ran in the state house. That's unheard of. You don't do that many house parties and fundraisers. But we raised money from small donors to get me to the state house.
Who were you turning to in that period of time? Because I think sometimes too, for people, especially younger people, you ran at a young age. Yeah. And I think there's this question of like, where do I even get started with doing this? Like, how did you even know where to start?
I'll tell you that a lot of this, I come from organizing. So I started serving on the board of one of the local organizing groups while I was the executive director of Center for Changing Lives. And in those spaces, I got to do a lot of work with some of the local political organizations that were being formed. Yeah. So this conversation about creating house parties. So what is a house party? My mom used to sell Jafra cosmetics and would take me to these house parties where she was selling Jafra. I don't think that's what it is. Right? Very different. But it was this opportunity to say, how do we bring people together who have never engaged in the political process, who have been jaded by this political process, who want something different, to begin to reimagine what that could be and organize people and money. Yeah. So we'd do these fundraisers and say to people, look, I know you've never really done big fundraisers. You're not a big giver. Like, you are living paycheck to paycheck to pay your mortgage, your rent. Could you help us raise $5,000? Bring 35 people, 40 people, And if you can't raise the 5,000, can you also help us get 20 people who will do 5 shifts of door knocking?
Door knocking, get 5 friends who are willing to vote. It's even down to the little things
Those
like that cost nothing.
I ran in a 4-way race against a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, in January of that race, the election was in March, if I saw one more mailer attacking me, like, why, when you're in it, right? You're like, oh my gosh, they're degrading me. They're lying, and I can't even spend time telling the people that it's a lie, because the more time I spend doing that, the less time I'm actually talking about the issues.
What did they really try to paint you as, though? It seems like your background it's difficult
State House,
to
what they painted me for in the State House is so different from what they try to do in the congressional. In the State House, one of the local aldermen who had chosen who he wanted in the state open seat said Ramirez worked at a shelter, and in the years working there, she made millions of dollars off of children. Children ended up in the streets, and she ended up with a lot of money. Right before I transitioned from the organization, the city of Chicago had reshifted the way that they funded programs. I had to close down our emergency shelter. So they tried to use the spinning around on it and say that the shelter was shut down because I had mismanaged funds. What they didn't know, and this was the joke, we had I almost went bankrupt for financing the campaign on my credit cards when we couldn't meet expenses. I would put it on my credit card. But this guy is telling people that I made so much money off of it. I made $65,000 at the end of my career there, after making $25,000 for 6 years. If that's millions, I'm not
You're
sure.
I'd like to see it if it is.
See them. And I don't know where the other zeros came, right? But it was hard for my mom and dad, who are not in politics, to have to see that attack after attack about a program that I cared so much about, that we had to shift and send that contract to another organization. So the beds were still there. We weren't administering them, but those were decisions I had to make so the organization can survive and grow. Today, that same organization does services citywide. Had I not made that decision, that would not be the case for the organization. So to see those attacks is really hard in real time. But I'll tell you, I came into the State House with authority. Very few people understood housing the way I did, had ran a social service agency and a shelter. Very few people understood the challenges of healthcare the way I did, because my family had personally experienced it. And I had been in the trenches, knocking on doors and working on ballot measures to democratize school board for the city of Chicago prior to going in there. I didn't owe the speaker anything.
Yeah.
And he knew, and the people there knew, that I had volunteers who were ready to flank me should they try to challenge me. It's a shift, right? And it meant that I
was
came
also
in there.
kind of the shift. It felt like a little bit in that era, at least in Illinois politics, out of that really staid old school, almost mob-like Illinois politics. I feel like right when you...
It was a Madigan era, right? I came in, and Madigan did not help me get elected. Madigan quietly helped someone else, perhaps. So to be able to come in there and say, I campaign on 3 priorities: housing, education, and healthcare, and I'm not going to wait 10 years to get things done. It shifts things. I also had organizations, unions, and coalitions who I would go to inform me on legislation. So it wasn't something I just had a staffer that worked for the speaker tell me, this is a good bill for you to move. No, actually, this is the bill that I need to move, and here's the work that I'm going to do. But I got to tell you something here as well. Relationships are really important, because you like it or not, you're not the insurgent that goes in there and then gets 60 votes. You also have to get 60 votes in the State House. You certainly need 218 votes here. And it's important for people to understand that I am unapologetically a progressive, and I understand that you need relationships to move legislation. You could do both.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you were taking your experiences and turning them into legislative action, which is different than rubber stamping something that someone else has given to you. And I think that is something that obviously not only does that put your knowledge into it, it puts your passion to it, and it, that can be the thing that moves a couple of the votes that are needed to push something forward. I think shifting a little bit back to DC and thinking about the Democratic Party in the future. I mean, you mentioned a little bit ago, you mentioned kind of getting money out of politics and keeping money out of politics. I'm curious if you felt like you would find quite a bit of support on that opinion. I'm curious if you ever felt, though, like that has that ever shut a door for you or kind of kept you out of a room that you maybe principally didn't want to be in, but you felt like, damn, I wish I were in there?
Well, let me just start by saying to you, when I decided, when I was asked to run for State House, I said no, honestly, maybe 50 times. And one of the main reasons was like, I don't come from money. I don't have a bunch of wealthy donors. I don't have all the deep connections with the people that folks would expect me to get these max out checks.
Yeah.
And I'm going through a divorce, and I'm going through a really difficult divorce where I'm going to have to now take over a mortgage and go from 2 incomes to 1 income. And you're telling me that if I run for office, I have to quit my job to do it? How the hell am I going to pay my mortgage and the debt and the credit cards? Working class people, it is so hard to run for office as a working class person because of the sacrifices you're asking people to make. Yeah. You are telling them, figure out if you have a friend, a family member, a loved one, a spouse that can pay for the bills so you can run for office. I announced I was running for office on August 28th, 2017. And on August 29th, I was in divorce court. Just think about that, right?
Oh, so it's a lot of juggling.
It is. And then I was told you have to raise $200,000 if you want to be at least credible and win this race, right? That's the reality of the game.
Yeah.
So for me, it was really important to ask people, you want me to run? I need to know where you're going to be the day after the election. Because for you, if it's just about someone running to run, it is my name. It is my life. It is my family on the line. I need to know you're in it for much longer and much more than just me. And that was really important to make the commitments of knocking on doors and raising money. But money in politics is real. Like, I have to spend 15 hours a week asking people for money. I don't come from an extended network. I can't self-fund. My husband and I are not in the position to be able to just, put our money into LLCs and all of that other stuff that people do so you don't see it. Like, this is my full-time job. And if there was one thing that I had a magic wand that I would solve, it's money in politics. Everything you and I care about is influenced and impacted by money in politics. It's why when you see Elon and Donald Trump fighting, these Republicans are freaking the hell out because they're like, one, I need his endorsement, and then I need his money. Yeah. And I can't let his money be used against me. So it's a very real thing. And to raise $10 million to run a primary is unconscionable.
Well, and it's gotten so, the numbers we see now, obviously, dwarf what happened 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And every time people think a race can't possibly get more expensive than that, we'd find a way in the next election to
But these super PACs can get away with it, right? So overturning Citizens United, to me, has to be a priority. And certainly in the Supreme Court, you're not going to see that happen anytime. But this is the kind of thing that I say to our Democratic leadership. You should care about money in politics. And if Elon Musk has not shown us the impact, I don't know what else will. Every dollar you have to be spending, because now it's the $20 million primary, is money you're not spending on winning the majority. Yeah. Every time that we're spending $20 million, you have to go justify to your constituents that you can spend $20 million in a campaign, but that school can't get air conditioning for their kids on a really hot August day, because that's when school starts.
And I think people do, when it's their day-to-day lives, they tie that back to their life and say, like, was that $1 billion well spent? Was that $100 million well spent? When people are very clearly struggling right now.
And if you want it to be, if Congress is supposed to be relatable, if the House is supposed to be the people's house, as long as we don't get money out of politics, it will not truly be reflective of the people.
I think I want to ask you something else. You're obviously an apologetic or unapologetic progressive. I think sometimes people feel, and this is a diverse party and there are different sides of it. And I think sometimes I think people have a question of kind of are progressivism and pragmatism at odds with each other. And I think there is this question where, maybe there are issues or progressive policies that sound good, but they sound really far off in the distance and really hard to achieve because they're lofty and they seem difficult. And so I'm curious for you, how do you view yourself as being able to kind of bring people along on progressive policies that where the journey looks long to actually making them a reality?
I think the first thing I would say to you is that what is a progressive? What is progressive policy? I would define it as the idea that we should create the kind of circumstance and conditions that anyone in this country can progress, regardless of their zip code, their gender, and their race, period. And if you have a problem with that, then I think we should be asking ourselves,
Yeah.
like, why are we in this position? Why do we do this job?
Yeah.
It's progress for all. That's it. And if you actually ask the constituents of a moderate, of a conservative, of a progressive, what keeps you up at night? It's the very same things.
Mm.
It's the fact that my copay continues to go up. So I'm actually skipping my doctor's appointment because I can't afford to go there and pay my rent. Is the fact that I really want to buy a house, but I can't pay it $100,000. But it used to be $250,000, but my wages are the same. The market is not. And I don't understand who's controlling the market. It's the same questions about the idea of I want to be able to make sure we have clean, safe water to drink. So if you actually start breaking it down, those are all progressive issues.
Yeah.
But I think it's really easy to make an excuse that I would dare to believe that people should be able to live and retire with dignity. Oh my gosh, that's such a big picture. You really can't do that. Well, the problem is that those little things that we say we're doing are not actually felt on the ground by the people.
Yeah.
And then you ask yourself why people don't think you relate to them. I spend more time telling them about this bill that I passed that maybe in 10 years will change their circumstance. They're trying to figure out how they're going to feed their children today.
Yeah.
There's a major disconnect. And I think it's really easy for the people that are not willing to actually like roll up their sleeves, call out the money in politics that makes them not vote a particular way, and actually do the work. So blame the progressive instead of asking themselves, what are the concrete, specific things you're doing to ensure that your constituents have a better life?
Yeah. And do you, clearly, Democrats aren't in power right now. And so I think there is kind of, I think, to your point, it's hard because there's this period of time at the moment where it's like.
But what are we for?
Yeah.
What are we for?
Yeah. And I think
we've been in power.
I think it's a value formation question of like, that is sort of what this moment is for too, in terms of really defining what the party's values are going to be and what they care about. And I think you're right. At the end of the day, you versus someone who is, on the other side of the spectrum, I guess, within the Democratic Party, then at the end of the day, you probably want the same things for your constituents that a lot of people do.
I think it's so easy and strategic to make excuses that my constituents are so different from yours.
Yeah.
And I know that in my own district, right, I serve people in the city of Chicago, in the most progressive city-like dense communities, to Winfield, Illinois, which is like unincorporated, and someone's backyard might be 7 acres. Like, there's a lot of similarities between the two, but someone said that they're so different that they could never have anything in common. Therefore, they can't have the same representation. Therefore, they can't care for each other.
Yeah.
Like, who is saying that? The same BS that you hear about neighbors. Like, it's okay that they're coming after immigrant communities because they're the reason you don't have a good job. They're the reason your healthcare is so expensive or your schools are not great. That's not immigrants' fault. But it's easy to desensitize yourself from it because then you don't have to actually ask yourself, why the hell haven't we done anything since 1986?
Yeah.
And Democrats have been in the majority a couple times since 1986. And I think that's the challenge. I really resent people saying that our response to Project 2025 is Project November 2026. Constituents don't give a damn about the election. They want to know if their life is going to be better.
Yeah.
So this is a point for Democrats to ask themselves, instead of just talking about what we're against, what are we for?
Yeah.
And I think this is the last part of it. What the hell are we willing to do to actually do something about it? Because there's a major distrust in government. They're so tired of our damn promises that don't deliver. And they don't care about the filibuster. They don't care about the subcommittee. They don't care about the discharge petition. They want to know, when you're in office, what the hell will you do for me?
Yeah.
Period.
I talk about that a lot, even like with my fiance. I'm like, if people are out there and they're working multiple jobs, 2, 3 jobs, all that, and they're just kind of doing the daily grind and the daily struggle. You're right. They are not thinking about the filibuster, or they're not keeping vote tallies in their head. They are just wondering how their life is going to get better day to day,
and how you relate to them.
Yeah,
Scott, I relate to them. Like, I know what it's like not to have health care. I know what it's like to go through miscarriages and emergency room visits and nearly go bankrupt from that. A good number of my colleagues don't. I know what it's like to pay for my mother's health care right now because she got knocked off of Medicaid 9 months ago on the day that the vice president was going to speak at the DNC. I remember getting that phone call while I'm at the DNC in Chicago from my mom, crying and saying to me, Delia, A Democrat is in office. I was just knocked off of Medicaid. I am diabetic because your dad and I own our home. I'm so angry. I'm so tired. And I have to hang up the phone and jump on an interview and talk about how great Democrats are. And then I have to go home and figure out how to find her in the marketplace, something that I could pay for, to try to compensate so my mother didn't lose her health care. I pay $600 a month for shitty insurance for my mom right now. So I think that it's also important for us to understand that we should be protecting Medicaid, but Medicaid needs to get improved.
Yeah.
We should protect Medicare, what we have, and it should be better. And people have said too, I mean, this is part of what happened on election day. People felt like what we were doing wasn't enough. You know why? Because it's not. And I think we need to get real about it. If they're calling us elitist, there's a fucking reason for that.
Yeah.
Stop talking wonky in such a way that it makes you feel good and enough for yourself and actually understand what people are going through. And don't wait until you're going to another election. Be willing to be with people. And I hate to even say this, but somehow Republicans have convinced certain people that they're more relatable. Spending this whole time blaming Republicans is not going to win us an election and win the policy changes.
Yeah.
We got to look from within.
Yeah. I mean, I think you are, very clearly a bold voice of the moment who is going out there and speaking. And I think that's important as well. I think there have to be people within the party and hopefully more and more people within the party that come out and are willing to be critical in a way that's like healthy and good too. I do think sometimes, and this happens on both sides of the aisle, there's this fear of criticism, right? Or being critical because it feels like if you are, then the powers that be are going to shut you out of things. And I think, it doesn't accomplish much at the end of the day. And it leads to this feeling that you just brought up of people saying, don't worry, it's going to get better. Things will get better, but it'll take a few years. And I think you're right. Yeah. I think there is this thirst for immediate.
And it actually, we should ask ourselves, when someone hears you say, don't worry, it's going to get better eventually, their response in their head is, how fucking privileged are you that you have 3-4 years to wait? I don't have a week. We have to understand that what's coming out of our mouth has real consequences in what people understand us to be.
Yeah.
And so I think this is a moment for us to demonstrate urgency. And I've said this over and over, and you may have heard this before. I think we need to stop thinking of ourselves as a minority. As a minority.
Yeah.
Here. I'm going to say, Democrats, stop thinking of yourself as a minority. What we have seen around the world, when there's a fascist government, there's an opposition party to that fascism. We have to be the opposition party to this fascism. Opposition party thinks very different than minority party.
Yep.
And we have to do that right now so we can get to an election so that we can do the thing that we're for.
Well, I think there's a question of boldness. Obviously, there's a again, it's a diverse party. The mindsets and the approaches to how we do these things are different, but I think boldness is something that can apply no matter where you sit on the spectrum. And
That's
I think
exactly
that
right.
is where people feel like we're missing. It's like, you might be center left, you might be far left, but where is the boldness? And I think that is something that feels that is missing at the moment. And, obviously you have that. And so I do hope people pick up some of that, again, even if they have disagreements with you from a policy perspective, like that is what people want to feel. And they want to feel, even when you're talking about your mom and her losing Medicaid, like, people want to feel that fire from the people they elected.
Well, and I think it's one of those things, like, don't get offended if someone asks you what the hell you're doing to make their life better.
Yeah.
Don't get offended and tell them to go talk to a Republican when you're their member of Congress.
Yeah.
Go show them what you're doing. And if you can't show them, then go do more.
Okay. And we're starting to come up on time. I've got, a couple of questions. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, but I guess at this moment in time, Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, do you feel like you've become the person that your younger self needed?
I think somewhat. And I'm still working on that person that my young self needed. But I will say to you that while I had a lot of people pour into me, I didn't see as many particular kind of Latinas pour into me. I didn't see Latina elected officials pour into me. I didn't have that, how people are like, who's your hero growing up, right? And, I didn't have the Latina Dr. King. I didn't have this particular elected official or this other person. And so for me, I've been in spaces where I have felt like there's an assumption that you're going to come into it and there's going to be this community that is built around you from people that have been there before. And sometimes I don't know if it's insecurity of them. Are you now like stepping into my space? Because, Congress is very territorial and seniority based. For me, it's been really important to pour into other, particularly women of color, in a way that I did not feel from some women of color. So I got elected to the state house, and then I said, I want to go help other Latinas who want to run for office, or other women of color, single mothers. I want to help people who have gone through this experience by themselves, like understand, like, I know what it's like. And hey, do you need help paying your mortgage this month? Because I knew that I needed, and I don't think anyone's asking you that question.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm trying to be that. And there are days that I have to also check myself. This place, if you don't go back to Humboldt Park, or to my mom who lives 2 houses down with my dad, or to the friends who tell me how it is versus what I want to hear, you can really just, I'm not saying lose yourself. You could lose yourself, but you can become this place.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to continually ask yourself, how am I giving back? How am I pouring into others? How am I developing others? And how do I remind myself that I'm no savior, I am no Jesus Christ, and I can get replaced in a heartbeat. And so I have to stay grounded and clear and focused.
Hear, hear. Last question before we wrap up. It's a long day. It's been a hellish day on the Hill. It's committee hearings have been crazy. You're just fried. You get off the Hill. Ooh, who's the first call you're making?
The first call I'm making usually is my husband. It's Boris. And I start by, how are the dogs?
I love it.
And then he's like, oh, you're not going to ask me how I'm doing?
The dogs are essentially children, so I get it.
I was like, how's Lola and Milo doing? He's like, oh, they're doing great. You want to know how I'm doing? And then like I do unwind scrolling. And it's like the one thing like on Instagram, and I'm glad I'm not on TikTok because I wouldn't sleep maybe. But the algorithms will algorithm. And so I have certain things that I get all the time, and it includes many golden retrievers as well, and all sorts of funny videos. But like those things help me just unwind in a way that I need. That's sometimes much better than the martini or the wine.
There we go. I'm embarrassed to say I've had more than once, I would say, the TikTok thing where you've been on it too long and this person comes on and they go, hey, have you thought about sleeping? Like it's a little bit jarring when it happens. So it's good you don't have it. Instagram Reels would be good enough.
And let me tell you, when you asked me what was the first call, I don't even think it's a call. I'll just go on my Instagram and then just start sending Boris the reels.
That's a good way to do it too.
And then after he gets like 15, I'll give him a call. I was like, I should probably call him now.
or you go.
Have you seen my reels?
Did you watch those? It's a good jumping off point. Congresswoman Delia Ramirez from Illinois' 3rd District, thank you for coming on Building the Bench. It has been such a pleasure having you here. Come back whenever you want. Our door is always open.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Appreciate you.
Thanks.